Hey guys, welcome back, and today I'm going to be doing my top 10 games of the year. Now I'm going to start off with the honorable mentions, which there are 5, and these games are really good games that I do recommend, but unfortunately, I had to make some decisions and they unfortunately did not make the cut. So let's get on to the actual honorable mentions. This is not in a particular order for the honorable mentions, so starting off here with Kirby Air Riders. So I actually really enjoyed this game. I enjoyed the single player offering with the road trip campaign, as well as all the other modes that you can play offline with bots. It was a lot of fun. But if you do have, online, it's probably a lot more enjoyable that way with actual human beings. But as far as playing solo goes, I did have a lot of fun with it, and I'm glad I actually gave it a chance. When I initially was not really planning on picking this game up at launch at least, but I'm glad I did. So that was Kirby Air Riders as our first honorable mention. The next game is a pretty controversial one, and that is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. So this is probably the last new game that I played this year. That's why I decided to make this video, is because this is the last major release that I'm going to be playing that is brand new and not a remaster or anything like that. Now, I did enjoy Metroid Prime 4, and the biggest gripe I have with the game is really the bike and the desert. Now, the actual desert and the bike, it's not like horrendous or anything, but it does slow the pace down for the game, and you can tell this was pretty much added on just as padding to really lengthen the game, because if the game did not have the desert or the bike, the game would be a hell of a lot shorter. But it still took me about 11 hours to actually beat the game, and I did do some exploring and all that, so I didn't just beeline everything. But even so, I think the game would have been more enjoyable if the bike was more of a on rails sort of thing, or even like a shoot 'em up style of mini game, I guess. Kind of like the gummy ship from Kingdom Hearts. That probably been more enjoyable. But other than that, I really enjoyed the actual game when it comes to the first person gameplay and the actual puzzles and everything. But yeah, I do recommend this game. So that was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Right, next up for my honorable mentions is going to be Nicktoons and the Dice of Destiny. So this is probably a shocker to actually be honored in this video. Now, the reason that it is in the honorable mentions is because I actually really enjoyed the game for what it is. Now, it's not the best game in the world or anything close to that, but the game is very enjoyable. The budget that they actually had, they maximize it to the most that they can. Of course, most of the voice actors did return as their characters. There's only a select few that didn't, but the gameplay was fun, and you can actually play with other people locally, of course, but I did play it solo and I still had a lot of fun. Now, it is pretty repetitive, but even so, I still had a lot of fun, and I had zero expectations when I started this game. So that was Nicktoons and the Dice of Destiny. Next up, of course, for the honorable mentions is going to be Mafia: The Old Country. So this is the newest Mafia game in a really long time. The last new one was Mafia 3, and this one's a pretty good game. I really enjoyed the story and the characters. It is pretty cliche, but most of Mafia stories are. But even so, it was a very enjoyable narrative experience. The gameplay is solid enough. It's not probably as polished as previous Mafia games, but I can't really say, because the only one I played besides this one was Mafia 1 Definitive Edition, and that one was a really good game as well. But even so, the only real problem with the game when I played it was the performance. But even so, I still really enjoyed the story enough that I can overlook the performance. But yeah, this game probably runs a lot better now, hopefully, but it is a game that I think it's worth experiencing if you love, narrative-driven games. So that was Mafia: The Old Country. And the last game I like to highlight for my honorable mentions, of course, is Death Stranding 2 on the Beach. So this is the most, I guess, anticipated sequel that came out this year, and honestly it's a very good game. It is a step up over the original game, but for me, the narrative in the first game I like a little bit more than I do in this game, only because some of the plot twists that actually happen in this game I saw coming from a mile away. Man, so that kind of pretty much not ruined the experience, but it did leave me a little disappointed that I actually guessed what the plot twists were going to be. But even so, I loved the gameplay. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot more engaging than it is in Death Stranding 1, because this game actually focuses more on the combat, and that was a lot of fun to take part in. But yeah, if you love the original game, you're going to love the sequel. So that was Death Stranding 2 on the beach. So now getting into my top 10 games of the year, of course. Coming in at number 10 for me is, of course, Silent Hill F. So I really enjoyed this game. Now the controls are pretty clunky, and there is some like jankiness to where it gets pretty frustrating. But overall, it was manageable, and I did enjoy the game and the story and the atmosphere, and that's what really like sold me on the game when playing this game. And of course, all of the actors and actresses did an amazing job in their roles, especially the main character. She did a fantastic job, and you can really like sense and feel the despair and everything that she was going through. And overall, this is a pretty good game, and if you like Silent Hill 2 Remake, you're more than likely going to enjoy this one. Just expect the combat to be a little clunky, and the only real fault I have with this game is really the performance towards the very end of the game, where it literally drops to the single digits for the frame rate. But apart from that, I really enjoy the game, and I do think this is a must play if you love survival horror games. So that was Silent Hill F for number 10. Coming in at number 9, of course, is Rune Factory Guardians of Ozma. So this was a pretty surprise for me, because I never played a Rune Factory game before, or a Story of Seasons game before, because these farming simulators aren't really for me. But this is more of an JRPG than it is an actual farming simulator, and honestly it's a perfect blend of the two. You do have to do the farming, but it's at a very minimal level, just enough for you to actually progress through the story. And towards the end of the game, I actually enjoyed doing the farming, but the actual combat is very, fluid, and I really liked, all the moves that you can do, and all of the party members you can actually recruit, and there was a bunch, and a majority of them you can actually romance and marry and have kids. And this is a very deep game that you can lose yourself very easily, and I spent probably around 50 hours playing this game, and honestly I could probably spend even more if I really wanted to. The only problem I had with the game was the performance on Switch 2. When you're in the village and you have a bunch of stuff actually built, that's when the game kind of freaks out a little bit. But apart from that, it is a pretty solid game, and this game is actually coming out on PS5, and Amazon is actually getting the physical exclusive if that's what you want. But yeah, I suggest you actually check this game out, whether it be on Switch 2 or on PS5 when that drops in February. But yeah, it's a really good game, and if you never played a JRPG with farming simulation in it, this is a very good game to actually get into, because it introduces the elements and different mechanics of the game very well, so it's not overwhelming or anything. So yeah, highly suggest you check this game out. So that was Rune Factory Guardians of Ozma. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Digimon Story Time Stranger. This is the newest release for the Digimon Story franchise, and this is actually the first one I've played. And to be honest, I wasn't really a big fan of Digimon, or even Pokemon, that is. But I knew of Digimon, and I decided to get this game because the game did look interesting when they showed it off in one of the showcases or something. So I decided to give it a shot. It is a turn-based JRPG, and of course, given it's Digimon, it's also a monster catching game. Now the difference between this one and Pokemon, in Pokemon you use Pokeballs to capture the Pokemon, and in Digimon you actually, defeat the Digimon you actually want to recruit, and once you reach either 100% up to 200%, you will actually create that Digimon yourself, and you are able to, evolutionize it and de-evolutionize it as well if you don't like the form that it took. And the Digimon can actually evolve into many different forms, not just one. And that's what I really like about the game, is that you can pick and choose what the Digimon will evolve to, and you can, unevolve it if you don't like what it evolved to. And I really enjoyed, the side quests. And I thought this game was going to be an open world, but it's not. It is open-ended in some areas, but it's a very linear game. And, it's easy to just, go through the motions and defeating Digimon, doing all the side quests. It was a lot of fun. The story is great. And you don't need to play any of the previous games to enjoy this one, because I didn't. So I highly suggest you check this out if you love JRPGs with monster catching mechanics. So that was Digimon Story Time Stranger. Coming in at number 7 is going to be Tormented Souls 2. Now, I did really like the original game, but honestly, I think Tormented Souls 2 is a step above the original game. It's a lot smoother. There's a little bit less glitches. There's still some glitches in the game. And at the time when I played it, which was at launch, some of the achievements and trophies were actually glitched, so no one can actually obtain 100% in the game, but that has since been fixed. And I will go back and actually finish the platinum. I might actually have already done that by the time this video comes out, but we will see. But overall, it's a very enjoyable survival horror game. If you love the original Resident Evil games on PS1, or even the GameCube remake and Zero, this is basically a love letter to that genre of horror, and it is incredible. I loved it. I really enjoyed the story, and you do have to play the first one to understand the sequel. But overall, if you just want to play it for the gameplay, it's excellent. And yeah, highly suggest you check it out if you love survival horror. So that was Tormented Souls 2. Now, rounding off to number 6, of course, is going to be Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. To be frank, I was not planning on picking this game up at all, but I went to Walmart and I saw it, and I was like, you know what, I might as well try it out and give it a shot. And I'm so glad I did, because I absolutely loved this game. And the only other Warriors game I played before this was One Piece Pirate Warriors 1 on PS3. So I knew what I was getting into, and honestly, it was a lot of fun. You do have objectives of capturing different zones and defeating as many enemies as possible and defending your, strong points. And, you do have some side quests here and there, and you also unlock different characters that are part of this Hyrule Warriors world. And this game does take place in the past, when Zelda time travels from Tears of the Kingdom to back in time, and it takes place during that whole stretch that she's been gone. And they did an excellent job on telling the story, and it really tied up everything for this era of Zelda. And I highly suggest you check it out if you love Warriors games. So that was Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Alright, so now we're getting into the top 5. So starting off at number 5 is going to be SpongeBob Titans of the Tide. That might actually come as a shocker to you, but I absolutely loved this game. Now, I'm specifically talking about the PS5 version, because the Switch 2 version is horrendous. But, the game itself is excellent. It's the best SpongeBob game we've gotten so far. The gameplay is improved. The platforming is incredible. I love the level design in this game. And yes, it is a lot shorter than the Cosmic Shake, but even so, the quality of the game itself is, above the Cosmic Shake, in my opinion, even though I still love the Cosmic Shake. And I hope whatever Purple Lamp Studio comes up next with SpongeBob, is even more of a step above this game when it comes to the length and how many, areas they can actually put in the game. Because I think that the gameplay in Titans of the Tide is pretty much perfect. Because you do have to switch between SpongeBob and Patrick in order to progress the platforming. Like, it's a must. You can't do it without one or the other. And it's absolutely incredible. And if you love platformers, you owe it to yourself to play this game. So that was SpongeBob Titans of the Tide. Alright, now coming in at number 4 is going to be Split Fiction. This is Hazelight's newest game, co-op game. And if you played It Takes Two, you know that game is incredible. So this game obviously is also incredible. Me and my sister played through the entire thing, and we had a blast playing this game. We were laughing, getting frustrated with each other, and overall just having a blast playing through this entire game. And we beat this game in a couple of days once it came out. And honestly, I still think about me playing this game with my sister. Even though this game came out towards the very beginning of the year, it's still a game I go back and think about. And honestly, I think this game should have been nominated for Game of the Year. But it is what it is. I do think it is a must play if you like playing co-op games, whether it be online with your friends or family members, or even just your friends or family members, locally on, the couch. But yeah, you owe it to yourself to play this if you can play it in co-op with somebody. Plus, the actual story is actually pretty good as well. So that was Split Fiction here. Alright, so now we're getting into the top 3. So coming in at number 3 is going to be very controversial, I'm sure. And that's going to be Clair Obscure Expedition 33 here. This is the Lumiere edition, of course. Like pretty much every single person that played Clair Obscure on release, I was completely blown away with this game. The combat, the story, the characters, it's all incredible. It is a very, very good game, and for this studio's first game, it's one heck of a game to just swing, and really hit and make a home run. Even though it's in 3rd place, that just tells you that, there's so many great games that came out this year. And honestly, if you've never played a JRPG game before, or even just a RPG before, turn-based RPG, this is pretty much the perfect game to get into these types of games. The story's good, the characters are good, the gameplay is engaging. It's not just you selecting attack and just letting the animation play out. You actually have to be paying attention, because when the enemy attacks you, you can either deflect or dodge the attacks, and it's a must thing that you have to do. And even playing on the easy difficulty, you will be tested. And overall, it's an incredible game, and I'm glad that I actually pre-ordered the game and gave the game a chance, because I know a lot of people did not give this game, much thought before it came out until after it came out and it was praised to the high heavens. But, I'm glad I played it, and it is definitely up there as one of my highest recommendations of games to play this year, of course. And that is, of course, Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Coming in at number 2 for the runner-up, of course, is Donkey Kong Bonanza. So it's been about 25 years since we gotten Donkey Kong 64. That was the last 3D Donkey Kong game we ever got, and was also the first. Now, the lead up to this game was very high, and there was, a couple of people here and there that were kind of skeptical about this game because they didn't know how it was going to turn out, given that it was a sandbox. You can pretty much do whatever you want. And I guess some people might have thought that this game could have been one of those goat simulator type of games, but it's not. And honestly, I was completely blown away with this game, and I loved every single second of it. The entire thing was very creative, very, interesting, and just, overall just a lot of fun. And I loved all the power-ups that Donkey Kong gets access to in this game. And it's just one of those, like, it's a video game. Like, it's not like super cinematic or, has the deepest story. It's just plain old video game fun. And That's what Nintendo is really good at with their games, and how they can market their games as a family, centric thing. And this is a must play if you have a Nintendo Switch 2. And of course, if you love Donkey Kong as much as I do, he is my favorite Nintendo character of all time. So I'm a little biased on that, but even so, the gameplay is fun, it's smooth. There is some slowdown here and there, but overall, it's pretty manageable. And yeah, if you get a Switch 2 or you're planning to get a Switch 2, this is a must buy for sure. So that was Donkey Kong Bonanza. Alright, so now we're getting into number one. So my number one game for this year, and that is my game of the year for the year, is of course here, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Now, I was so scared to actually play this game. Now, I heard of KCD1 years ago when that first came out, and the rep for that game was it's very realistic, very brutal, it doesn't pull any of its punches. So I was very intimidated to try KCD1. Now, when KCD2 was announced, I didn't really pay that much attention to the game. Now, the further the game got along in its development and towards the final stages of its, development, is when I really started to pay attention to the game. And just seeing all the footage that they were releasing for the game, I decided to take a chance to actually play this game. And I'm so glad I did, because this right here is the most immersive RPG I've ever played. It is the greatest RPG I've ever played. Now, going back to 2011 when Elder Scrolls V Skyrim came out, that was the very first game I actually lost myself in. Like, I literally, from the moment I woke up all the way until it was time to go to bed, I was just playing Skyrim non-stop. This game did that to me. This was the first game that did that to me since Skyrim. And there's been a lot of great games in between that, but this was the one that I truly lost myself in since Skyrim. And that is something very, very special. I literally spent 5 to 6 hours just going around, picking up herbs, and creating many different potions. 5 hours just doing that. It sounds really boring, but when you're actually doing it in game, you get lost in it, like you're actually living in this world. And of course, you play as Henry, and you don't even have to play the first one to enjoy this one. It really summarizes the original game very well, so you're up to speed like that, and just going around many different settlements, completing random side quests, finding random encounters. It's just something else, man. And just the fact that this is a true medieval world, there's no fantasy in this game whatsoever. There's no dragons, there's no goblins, none of that. It's just pure historical medieval goodness. And you can make this game kind of like Monty Python if you want. There is some dialogue that is absolutely hysterical in this game. And I just love this game so much. I spent close to 100 hours playing this game, and I would say 60% of that time was spent on just the first map alone. I did kind of rush through the game towards the end because, there were other games coming out, and I did wanted to finish this game and enjoy the rest of the story. But even so, like, I do want to go back and, replay this game one day, but I don't know how long it'll be before I do that, because like Skyrim, after I played and beat that game, it took me like 100 hours or so as well. And, it's hard for me to go back because I'm afraid that, second runs or third or fourth runs of this game, it's not going to hit the same when you first experience it for the first time. You know what I mean? So, I do want to replay it, and I know there's DLC out. The final DLC came out for this thing not that long ago. And honestly, I don't know if I'm actually going to buy the DLC, because I think just the base game alone has so much content that I still probably haven't seen yet, that I do want to go back and experience more of it. But yeah, I highly recommend this game if you never played even the first one before, And if you are scared, I do think this game is worth experiencing. It is like going on sale quite frequently now for as much as like 40% off. So that is an absolute steal. But yeah, if you want to experience one of the greatest RPGs ever made, I highly suggest this game. So that was KCD2 here. So I'm actually filming this the night before the Game Awards. So we'll see how that goes tomorrow. But that was my top 10 games of the year, as well as some honorable mentions in the very beginning. So I would like to know what your top 10 games are for this year, or top whatever games that you've played this year. And so like, say you only played 2 or 3 games that came out this year, how would you rank them amongst each other? So anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.